it's Emily here, and today I am bringing you the January monthly recommendations, and this month we are talking about historical fiction. In case you don't know, Monthly Recommendations is a Goodreads group hosted by Kayla Rain and Trina from Between Chapters, and basically every month people post a video or a blog post of their recommendations, and there is a topic for each month, and this month it is historical fiction. So this year for monthly recommendations, something that I really want to focus on is recommending books that you don't really hear people talk about much on BookTube. I feel like I do a fairly decent job of it already, but you know, there are so many books that, you know, everyone's going to be having on their list. Like, I feel like with historical fiction, you know, a lot of people are going to mention Codename Verity, which is a great book, and I definitely want to recommend it, but I feel like everybody's going to be mentioning it, and a lot of people have mentioned it in the past, and I want to kind of focus on some books that don't get as much video and blog time, or a book like Outlander. I loved Outlander. The second one is kind of but the first one I really, really liked. But, you know, I think Diana Gabaldon is doing pretty well for herself, and people are aware that Outlander exists. Same thing with, like, Gone with the Wind. So hopefully with my monthly recommendations videos, I'm going to be kind of bringing some books in the spotlight that haven't been talked about a whole lot before. So first up, we have Gracelyn O'Malley by Ann Moore. I'll be totally honest, I haven't read this book in years, but I was obsessed with it in high school. So this book is the first one in a trilogy about Gracelyn O'Malley. This is the first one, and it starts out when she's a teenager, but as the trilogy goes on, she gets older and she's like in her 20s, and technically these are adult books and not young adults, even though she is 16 years old. And basically her family is very poor, and then she is married off to a wealthy Englishman who is basically the worst, and this whole trilogy is just really about her and how strong she is and how she overcomes adversity, and it's so good. I really need to reread this book again. Next up, I have The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle by Abby, and this is another one. It's kind of like middle grade slash upper middle grade slash younger young adult. The main character is Charlotte Doyle, and she is 13 years old. It is 1832, and she is the only passenger on a ship across the Atlantic, and also the only woman on this ship. And back in the day, if you were the only woman on a ship, that was considered bad luck. And then she is accused of murder and found guilty. And it is such a great book. I think I read it for the first time when I was like in 5th grade, and then I reread it when I was older, and I still loved it, and I probably need to reread it again because it's such a great book. It's really girl power, and it's really adventurous and exciting, and it's so good. I really, really like this one. If you want a short, middle grade slash young adult book that's very girl power, this is a great pick for you. Next book is kind of talked about somewhat a lot on BookTube, but I guess apparently she's not a bestseller, and she totally should be a bestseller, so I'm basically going to keep pushing her until she is a bestseller, and that is Mindy McGinnis and A Madness So Discreet. It is wonderful. It takes place in the 1800s, and we have a Grace May who is put into an insane asylum by her family because she is pregnant, and then she teams up with a doctor and they fight crime. And it's so good. There's a lot of neurodiversity in this book, and it's just really fantastic. And another girl power book, so that's awesome. There's a great friendships, and there's a platonic relationship between her and the doctor. I personally ship them, but there is not an actual romance, and it's so good. Please go read Mindy McGinnis. Everybody needs to read Mindy McGinnis right now. Right now. And then if you are a person who doesn't mind a more faith-based book, I recommend The Voice of the Wind. This is the first book in the Mark of the Lion trilogy by Francine Rivers. And it's another one I really need to reread. Basically, I just need to reread all of my historical fiction books because they're all fantastic. And I've been so focused on fantasy lately, I need to get back into my love of historical fiction. But it takes place in Rome. This is like after Jesus died, and now the Christian faith is spreading, and the Roman Empire is kind of after them. And this follows a few different perspectives, and it is about this Jewish girl who is a Christian. She's Jewish heritage, but has a Christian faith, and she is a slave in a Roman household, but then there's also this like German gladiator guy, and there's all these great people and characters, and it's a really, really awesome trilogy, and I love it. And I just want to let you know that when you finish the first book, you're probably going to want to pick up the second book immediately, because I know that's totally what happened to me. If you really like World War II stories, I recommend Dream When You're Feeling Blue. I read this book a few years ago, and it was really good. It is about these sisters who live in America. They're on the home front, and one of them is dating a soldier in the war seriously, and another girl, she starts to see a soldier, like, during the war. Like, they meet at, like, a dance, and then he goes back off to war. And it's definitely a kind of about their romances and the relationships and the struggles of, like, having that relationship of a soldier who's overseas in the war. But it's also, a lot of it is about these sisters and kind of how they support each other and help each other through these hard times. And I kind of love World War II stories, and I really like stories about the home front during World War II. And so if you like sisters and World War II and homefront stuff, this would be a really great pick for you. And then my final recommendation is one of my all-time favorite authors, and that is Elizabeth Chadwick, and this book is The Greatest Night. This is one of my all-time favorite books for forever and ever, amen. It is so fantastic. You really could read any of Elizabeth Chadwick's books. They're all really, really great. And I know she is famous internationally and stuff, but I feel like on BookTube, we don't talk about her, and we totally should talk about her because she's awesome. I will say that some of her research methods are a little bit unconventional, and she kind of talks about that in her author's notes, and you can kind of read that and determine for yourself how you feel about it. But she really is like a historian at heart, and so all of her books are so historically accurate, and I really love her author notes because in the back she explains her research, she explains different things that she changed in the stories, and especially with The Greatest Night. This is about the man William Marshall during the medieval time period, and he was a real person. He was one of the greatest knights of his time. He was kind of like the David Beckham of his time, and he served for King Richard. So like King Richard of like Robin Hood, that King Richard, he was his knight. And so this book kind of talks about his early life of like when he's a teenager through like late 30s, early 40s, I think. Maybe early 30s, I can't remember exactly, but kind of like the first half of his life and his career. And I just fell in love with William Marshall, and I just have like kind of continued to keep reading Elizabeth Chadwick books because of this one. You really could read any of them in any order. They all technically stand alone, but I highly recommend starting with this one because so many of her other books tied back to William Marshall and the characters referenced in this book. Literally every person in my real life that I have recommended this book to has become addicted to Elizabeth Chadwick. Because you want a really good historical fiction, please read Elizabeth Chadwick and read The Greatest Night so we can gush about William Marshall for forever. So there you have it. Those are my historical fiction recommendations. Please go check them out. And I really do love historical fiction, but I haven't been reading as much lately. And so maybe as I watch your videos, I'll be able to get a few ideas of more historical fiction books to read. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.